All right, all right, all right. We are in the infantile stages of the endless hustle here, and we have already caught a white whale who encapsulates everything we are trying to highlight with this podcast. Former NHL player who's transitioned to an author, actor, podcaster, restaurateur, advertising strategist. Jesus Christ, dare I say fashionista as well? Sean Avery, welcome.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
I mean, there are 18 million Americans out of work right now, and you may be the reason, gobbling up all the damn jobs.
The podcast job is that's a full-time job. I don't think I realize how much work it is. So you guys enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride.
It's just you on no gruffs given, Sean Avery's podcast. It's just you speaking into the mic, right?
Every once in a while, I'll have guests. For the most part, it's me. The show is based around me and my perspective. I started it really as a tool so that when the cancel culture came to get me, I had something that was long form that I could kind of defend myself. That was really the idea at the beginning of it. Now it's kind of morphed into something different. It still has that original seed behind it, but yeah, it's turned into something fun. I think people are into it. I think this coming week will be our 40th episode. I got a great team behind me, which is really important. So when I say it's just me on the mic. Once I'm done hitting record, then my editors and everybody kind of takes over. So it's been a fun process.
Hockey is a sport, unlike maybe the NFL and the NBA, where individualism isn't necessarily inspired. It's more about team and stay conservative and be within the culture. When you were in your career, in the prime of your career, you were like, fuck that. Let me just be me and have some fun here and build a brand. When was that moment for you where you kind of took a step back and you were like, I'm just going to be me?
I don't know what the evolution of it was or where it sort of kicked off. I mean, I remember when I got traded from Detroit to LA, that was sort of a moment where I said, yeah, I'm going to kind of do this on my own. I got to LA, I hired a publicist, Nicole Shabbat, who was my publicist for a long time. I started to kind of create, I guess you could say, a brand. At that point, it was more of a personality. And I think at that point, it was also driven by the character that I was playing on the ice. And I think that, I was trying to just pour fuel on the fire all the time because that was still early on and I wasn't really focused on doing anything else at that point. I was only a hockey player. But there was a method to my madness. But no, to your point, today it's much different. All the guys that play now, or a lot of them, they think about what is my brand. If you look at a guy like PK Subban, who's still playing and he's doing all these different things. When I was playing, if you did that, you were a bad guy. You were considered like not part of the team, not part of the boys club. You were an outsider. And in my case, I was selfish and, a whole long list of like not very nice accolades that were attached to me.
Did you ever have a moment in 2012 when you hung up the skates when you were like, shit, like what now? Or did you already have that mindset that hockey was just like a springboard for other endeavors?
Honestly, I knew that I was going to do something else. I didn't know what. And no matter what, I knew that to make that transition, I needed to do it at that age because, doing it at 40 when you're a little bit punch drunk or, your body's beat up a little bit more, I think it's much more difficult to do that. So no, I didn't look back and think, oh, I should have kept playing a couple more years. Because it's been a journey, a transition where if you don't go into hockey, it's not the easiest transition. It's taken some years to be able to do that.
You got to work at Vogue, and that's not something that most hockey players can say that they've done. Hockey, obviously, you're talking about the toughest of the tough guys, and you were known as a tough guy. So when you make the Vogue announcement, people are like, what is going on here? What were your thoughts as all that was happening? Were you like, this is awesome, or you were getting backlash? What was going on?
My decisions that I made were always rooted in me just wanting to do what I wanted to do. I think at that point, I never thought, oh man, this was a bad idea. Like I said earlier, I think it was me. I had a method to the madness. Like I was fueling the fire of when I did the internship, it all of a sudden the storyline became that I was like gay, and the guys that I played with.
People were chirping you on the ice about it too, right?
Yeah, definitely, all the time. And I think a lot of that was guys felt uncomfortable. I think they felt uncomfortable that I was doing things that maybe they had aspirations to do at that point, or that I just wasn't sitting in the box that they wanted me to sit in. There was never a moment where I was like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I was on a journey and trying to discover different things. And like I always say, that part of the opportunity you get when you become a professional athlete is you get a lot of doors that are opened. Now, whether you walk through them or not is your decision. And I think a lot of guys don't do that.
Is fear of failure a sensation that Sean Avery feels, or have you always had that tolerance to new challenges?
I think like an interesting analogy is like, if you're a hockey player and you fight somebody for a teammate, you can never lose the fight. You come to the bench, you could get your ass kicked, and you come to the bench and 20 guys are like standing up cheering for you.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is discovery in my mind is the same thing, like putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, taking chances, doing things that possibly you can fail at. That's what makes people strong. Like I don't give a shit ever when the people that are professionals at trying to feed off of other people's failures, when they tap into maybe me failing at something. Like I don't know, maybe it was always I was the smallest guy on the team also, and I kind of I just always had a chip on my shoulder since I was young. But I want to be around people that take chances and do things that isn't the norm. So yeah, it never fazed me.
Sean, I was just listening to your latest podcast, and I've got to admit, there was a moment in time where I was actually a fan of Call Her Daddy. I don't know if you know. So there was a whole saga where she was at war and they were at war with Barstool over contract negotiations, and every middle-aged guy like myself was literally tuned in. So when I'm listening to your podcast, I thought it was the funniest shit I've ever heard, because you were kind of going through this whole discovery. What's kind of been the reaction since you released that? Because they have such an enormous fan base. She does.
The majority of people that have come at me about it were like, dude, that's the best. Like I have a 14-year-old daughter. I would never let her listen to it. I do everything in my power to make sure she doesn't listen to it. A lot of women were like, thank you. We would like to think that having more self-respect for yourself is what's cool nowadays. I get a good bounce. I always get good bounces when, content, it sort of finds me. I don't know. And that was an interesting situation where she actually moved in, renting the apartment across the street from my apartment with my wife, Hillary. But yeah, that podcast is like everything as a parent, as a new parent, everything that I could think that I would not want my kid to listen to is Call Her Daddy. I mean, it's like, and the fact that that's the #1 podcast in the country, I would say that it surprises me, but I guess it kind of doesn't, it really doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah, it's that shock and awe factor that seems, and one of the co-hosts dropped out, and it's not even missing a beat. I guess when, tongue and assholes is all the rage nowadays, I guess.
Yeah, you would think like, I feel like sometimes I think to myself, that thing doesn't have legs. Like, come back to me in a year and see how you're managing, like still talking to yourself or interviewing, sex experts. I don't know. Dr. Ruth had a pretty good run. It's funny because like, I would think that looking back and thinking when I started the podcast, like, what was I going to talk about? Was I going to talk a lot of shit? And was my podcast going to be very controversial? It's actually became the complete opposite. It's become this like vehicle for, guys and girls to kind of tap into challenging themselves from it. When you listen to Call Your Daddy, I don't know what challenge you take from that. I don't know if there's anything that I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I've listened to it. I can't get 5 minutes into it. anytime I hear like vocal fry from a New Yorker that talks like a Valley girl from California, I'm just like, yeah, I'm good.
You're a dad. How does that change you as a man? I'm single, no kids, 42. So I've never kind of had that experience. How did it change you as a similar age group?
Yeah, I mean, I was always the guy when I was like 25 or 30 saying to fellow teammates, like, dude, you're out of your mind. You're fucking 25. You got 2 kids already. Like, live a little, you know? I'll take that position still to a certain extent because I didn't have my first kid until I was 40. Thank God I waited till I was 40 because it totally changes your life. Now, if, you know, you don't have aspirations to do different things, then having a kid is incredible because it does change your life for the better. But I think the timing of it for me was perfect. You know, there's a lot of things that I've done that I wouldn't have been able to do had I had a kid earlier, for sure. But you know, now I watch TV and I just, you know, I watched this 30 for 30 on a little league team, a New York little league team, and like 15 minutes in, I was in a full breakdown of tears. Like, you know, commercials hit you differently. Everything fucking, it turns everything upside down for sure.
Even the league's most infamous enforcer can get softened up by a child.
Yeah,
It's great
totally.
to know. Sean, I want to talk to you about one of your other side hustles because you may be the only person on the planet to know what it's like to skate onto the ice at MSG and also act in a Christopher Nolan movie. How do those things compare adrenaline-wise? Are you nervous when the puck drops or they say action?
Oh man, Tenet is Chris Nolan's latest movie. It's in the theaters now. I think it'll be in the theaters for a long time. I can remember my first day of dialogue on set. It was my first day on set. I think I shot 27 or 28 days. My first day was the day that I had dialogue. I was so nervous that I lost all the moisture in my mouth. My mouth basically, like you see the cartoons when the somebody's mouth just disappears. That's kind of what happened to me. Yeah, it was a wild experience. We also had no idea what we were talking about because the movie, you probably need to see it a few times to understand what the movie.
Yeah, I heard it's great, but you need like an Adderall to figure out where the plot's going.
Yeah, actually, I would say do the opposite. Take a Xanax or smoke a big joint because, and Nolan said it beforehand. I saw it in the press. Like, just feel the movie. Don't try and figure it out the first time.
Right.
And that's really kind of what it is. Now, as an actor, being one of definitely the biggest movie that I've ever been a part of. Yeah, I was scared shitless. I knew nothing about what was happening. You know, I knew. I got into the van the first day, and it was me, Rob Pattinson, John David Washington, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and I had, up until that point, I had no idea who was even in the movie. Watching that guy work, there's a reason why he can make the movies that he can make. He's so singular focused. He's so dialed in on what he's doing. I've never seen anyone with such intensity in anything that I've ever done at the highest level.
How about the actors? I know they have the public perception of being pampered and hard to work with. Does that have any truth to it, or is there more that meets the eye there?
No, not on a Nolan set because nobody gets pampered. There was an uproar a couple weeks ago or a month ago. Anne Hathaway said there's no chairs on a Chris Nolan set. Like, yeah, there's no chairs. There's no nothing. Like, no one gets pampered. Everyone is literally on the same playing field on his set.
I heard you had your own trailer though.
I had my own trailer. Yeah, that was nice. Yeah, I mean, you know, behind the scenes, like, yeah, you're on a $400 million movie. Like, yeah, it doesn't get much better than that.
Do you have any of your own writers, or you have any interesting ones? I know Hasselhoff has a life-size cutout of himself in his dressing room. Does Sean Avery have any?
Not yet. Hopefully I never get to that point. I feel like the less you're noticed on a set, the better of a job you're doing.
What's the audition process like for you, Sean? Because you're a hockey player, you're a retired hockey player. So when you go in there and Rob Pattinson's on your right, John David Washington is on your left, and you're competing against these guys and girls who've been in this business for possibly a couple decades at that point. Are they taking you seriously? What's kind of the environment that you have to go through to get there? And then once you're there, how do they treat you?
So first of all, those guys definitely aren't auditioning. So that's the good thing, is like I'm not walking into an audition and seeing them in the waiting room. The other good thing is everything's done on self-tape now. So like the idea of an audition room, it's kind of obsolete even pre-COVID. The hardest thing, and like when I started this journey 4 years ago, a friend of mine, Peter Berg, put me in a movie called Patriots Day, just kind of as a gag. Like it's a small scene. I say one line. I play a cop. I came back to New York. I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an actor. It was like the closest feeling I'd ever had to skating out on Madison Square Garden, center ice. All of a sudden you're on set. There's 200 people. They say action. It's like a fireball of energy. I came back to New York. I had to learn how to audition because I had never memorized anything in my life. I realized I didn't know a lyric to any song that I had ever heard. It took me 3 years to be able to learn how to memorize. And part of that process is understanding how to wrap your head around a character and like step inside of it. So I love auditioning. I had an audition yesterday. I love the process. It's a great process. I think, there's so much more to it outside of that because, I don't like to think that I'm going to rely on an audition tape and a casting director and 4 other layers of decision makers to try and see if I'm going to end up in a movie. The guy that John Papsidera, who cast Tenet, the reason that I know that I know John is when I got an agent, my agent sent me in on a general meeting with John Papsidera. John Papsidera's wife she runs Dancing with the Stars. I had done Dancing with the Stars when I first retired. When I think about Dancing with the Stars, I think like, what the fuck were you thinking doing that? But I laughed about it with my wife the other day. The reason I did Dancing with the Stars was so that 4 or 5 years later, I was going to walk into a room and meet John Papsidera, and there was going to be this connection. And he's been a guy that's kind of shepherded me along through this process. And that's how I ended up on a Chris Nolan set. So like everything, I come back to like me putting myself in uncomfortable situations. When you do that, you get rewarded.
When you're a celebrity athlete, the doors are open everywhere. The clubs, the women, you name it, you got it. What was a great story when you were in the prime of your career and you're Sean Avery, the famous athlete, that you pulled the Sean Avery card to get something?
I mean, it's funny. It's kind of the opposite. Well, there's 2 parts. One time I used, I had a guy that I knew that runs Woolman Rink, which is the rink in Central Park. And I used to, basically he would shut the rink down or open the rink up, and I would take like girls on dates to the rink, and like I'd take girls skating on Central Park, and the rink was private. You've seen it in movies a few times where it's like the most picturesque, beautiful thing. Yeah, it's like, so I did that, I did that a lot. So that was a nice opening move always. But I was eating at Per Se one night after a game, which is a super fancy restaurant in New York. It's like probably the fanciest restaurant in New York, I think. And I was eating dinner, and I had all of a sudden I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I heard this very distinct voice. And he said, I really like that Avery's game. And he was talking to me, but he referred to me sort of like he wasn't talking to me. And I looked up, and it was Donald Trump. And,
What?
he came to games all the time. He never would stay for the 3rd period, but he came to games. He came to a lot of games. That's such an interesting thing because it wasn't like he walked into the restaurant and somebody told him that he walked in, he saw me, he knew who I was. Like I felt Donald Trump reads Page 6. He knows who the Rangers are. He probably watches games. Like he walked over, put his hand on my shoulder, said that. We had a little conversation. It was one of those things like I'll never forget.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine that you were electrifying in that city when you were playing. Like it was even, I mean, I grew up in Boston. So like, I mean, it was awesome to hear all your antics, like during your career when you were with New York, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I don't really think of it in that sense. But yeah, if you came to a Ranger game at Madison Square Garden, you would definitely say to yourself, who is this Avery kid? Or if you weren't a fan, or if you were a fan, like I tried to always make myself known that I was in the building. That's for sure.
Yeah, you succeeded, I think, tenfold. I got to bring this up because I saw TMZ posted a video. I think it was a couple years ago, but it was from, I think it was like the year after you retired. And you were fighting these two dudes in the street. And I laughed out loud when I heard this.
Three guys.
Three guys, yeah.
Three guys.
You stopped out loud and you literally were like, dude, stop. I'm literally going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like it was such like a dude, you know, this is more for you than it is for me. I just remember bursting out laughing when I saw that. It was so hilarious.
Yeah, those guys, my now wife, Hillary, who you know, I have strict rules on how I'm allowed to act out on the sidewalk in New York now.
What guys are crazy enough to fuck with Sean Avery? Like,
yeah, I don't, you know, I think three guys, they thought that like power numbers, they had definitely had a couple of drinks. They made a comment to my wife, Hillary. I asked Hillary to go home. She saw the look in my eyes and said, yeah, it's probably a good idea. I saw the look in her eyes, like, I'm going to fucking kill you when you get home. So you better not be in bad shape because I'm going to make it worse. Yeah. And these three guys decided they wanted to take a run at me. You know, the thing is, like, people don't really know how to fight, right? Like, people don't know how to street fight. Guys don't know how to street fight. Street fights, you got to be patient. You got to be calm. You can't let the moment get to you. You got to just let it come to you. And like, it's actually much easier than you would think. You know, the problem is that I can't do what I want to do because then I'll end up in jail. So I have to kind of manage the fight enough where I can smack them around, make sure that whoever's filming, because somebody's always filming, I look good while they're filming it. And that I don't kill these guys. So it's like there's a million things going on in my head while it's happening. But yeah, that was a funny one. My son Nash when he's 12 years old, he'll be able to look at that and go, wow, Dad, you were really nuts, weren't you?
He'll look at that with pride, I'm sure.
I'm a Philly guy originally, and there was a recent story on Donald Brashear, who used to be a super fan favorite in Philly, and obviously an enforcer, and he was working at a Tim Hortons in Canada, I think in Toronto. And it was just this, you know, sad cautionary tale about what happens when you don't save your money, and this is what can happen. Was there a point where you started thinking, all right, listen, great times are great times, but I've got to put away some money. I've got to make sure I'm going to be taken care of once I'm off the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're always thinking about that. I mean, I think that's why I work so hard right now. You know, I'm 40 years old. I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface. I feel like, you know, hockey was hopefully when I look back, it's going to be a blip on it from like a financial standpoint. Like, I definitely have big aspirations. Sports are tricky because you can wake up one day and it's over, it's done. And, you know, if you don't do things to get yourself ready afterwards, then you sort of become defenseless. And like, I didn't read that story about Brash, but it's funny. One of the things that is very difficult, and I think athletes need to understand, is like, when you're done playing, you become a regular person. You have to let that life go. So when you're done playing, if you need to go and get a job, like, go and get a job. Like, I would never, when I think about that, I assumed like maybe Brash maybe he got a job at Tim Hortons because he needed a job. Like, it's like, you got to work, right? And I think that athletes have this stigma that they're much more important than they are when they're done playing, but you become a regular person very quickly. And like, you know, you have bills to pay and you have things that you need to take care of. And I think that's part of the problem with guys when they're finished is they can't grasp onto the reality that they're in. And it's tough.
The Uncle Rico syndrome. I mean, I'd have to imagine it's just brutal. Like once you leave those lights, it's just like, oh, now I'm just a regular guy.
I think for a lot it is, I think that's usually the guys that when you see a picture of them in their office at home, it's like the walls are littered with their own memorabilia. It's
Right.
like, yeah, I always found that very odd for some reason. It always made me feel very uncomfortable.
You owned restaurants and bars, so you've been in that business. We're in New York right now. This has been an enormous discussion, obviously, with de Blasio and Cuomo. What are your thoughts about what's going on with the restaurant and bar scene here in New York with everything we're dealing with COVID?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a fucking terrible business to be in, and we actually made money at it. And so I wouldn't recommend it for anyone. Our mayor this guy is a joke. He is a fucking joke. You can walk down. I saw kids playing full basketball court today, like a real basketball game, no mask. Everyone was bumping. They were spitting. They were soaking sweat. Like, it was a fucking New York basketball game. But you can't walk into a restaurant and have dinner. The whole thing is ass backwards. It's being run by egomaniacs that have no fucking clue what the average person is going through. And New York being like I guess a democratic state, people are just full of shit. And yeah, like I'm getting the fuck out of here. We're selling our apartment and we're leaving because I can't
follow Joe Rogan to Austin.
Actually, we're looking at Nashville. We're looking, Austin, a bunch of different places. Yeah, this is a sucker's game staying here now with this shit. But it's terrible. It's criminal, in my opinion. You could walk outside and watch basketball games being played, but you can't go to a movie theater. Like
Just
yeah,
so hypocritical.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Avery, we're going to finish up here with what we like to call a hustle round. I am going to give you a choice of two options, and you're going to give me which one you prefer on first instinct. If you take more than 3 seconds, it's bad luck for 7 years. You ready?
Yeah.
Better home uniforms, Rangers or Blackhawks?
Rangers.
Doritos, Cooler Ranch or Nacho Cheese?
Cool Ranch.
Text message or call?
Text.
Big spoon or little spoon?
Little spoon.
Indica or sativa?
Sativa.
Your wife aside, blondes or brunettes?
Blondes.
Lake or ocean?
Lake, but neither.
Who are you prouder to be Canadian, Seth Rogen or Keanu Reeves?
Keanu Reeves.
Bigger lasting achievement, the Avery Rule or People's Sexiest Man Alive list?
I would say the Avery Rule.
Good answer. Better pizza, New York or Chicago?
Chicago.
Money or fame?
Money.
Better actor, Denzel Washington or Leonardo DiCaprio?
Ooh. Plead the fifth.
Better actress, Scarlett Johansson or Alicia Cuthbert?
I'd say that's a 50-50 on that one.
Yeah, good call. Cargo shorts, stylish or unacceptable?
Yeah. Unacceptable.
Better comedy, Step Brothers or The Hangover?
The Hangover.
Tortorella or de Blasio?
Fuck, I'd take Tortorella.
Oh, wow, that is bold. Fuck de Blasio, huh? All right,
Yep.
Sean Avery, you survived the hustle round. Thank you for joining, folks. Don't forget to check out Avery's podcast, No Gruffs Given, and like and subscribe to The Endless Hustle while you're at it.
Thanks, guys.